importance and the benefits of saving beforehand. Next. In our next slide, we're looking at a family that has saved for college. And on the left, our saving family started when the child was born and has been saving $100 a month for 18 years. The interest earned on such savings comes to $13,400. And so the family on the left has a total of $35,000 in this example by saving $100 a month. The family on the right also needs $35,000 for the sake of discussion, but they were not able to save. And so they've had to borrow the $35,000. And assuming a 7% interest on the loan payback, that family ends up paying $48,720 for the same $35,000. Next. So what we're emphasizing in that example, obviously, is earning interest on your savings as opposed to paying interest for borrowing for college. Next. How much you have to save is going to depend on gathering information and learning things, as we all know. And so looking at the cost of college can be obtained from the sites mentioned, online calculators, net price calculators, and the White House scorecard. That can help us get an estimate of what the college costs are going to be. Next, we have to learn about understanding what financial aid is. And broadly speaking, financial aid includes scholarships and grants, as well as loans and work eligibility for the student. Next, we encounter determining your college savings goal. And few of us can save the entire amount, but you have to set a goal for yourself in terms of how much you'll be able to save, how much you want to save. Finally, the savings vehicle is something that many families will consult with a financial advisor in terms of what is the best savings vehicle for saving for college. Next. This page shows the increase in college costs, and we all know that the college cost increases have been severe. Over the past 20 years, you see that the published cost of a four-year college has gone up 83%, and in the case of four-year private colleges, the costs have gone up 60%. However, the importance of financial aid is undeniable. So when you net out financial aid for the public four-year colleges, the cost of college over the past 20 years has been 58%. And similarly with the private colleges, if you net out financial aid, the increase over 20 years has been 30%. So the importance of financial aid cannot be underestimated. Next. College financial aid policies vary widely. Notre Dame, as one example, is in a small group of colleges that guarantees to meet the full demonstrated financial need of each student who applies for and qualifies for need-based aid. But other colleges have a real variety, and so it really requires that each family learn about the financial aid opportunities and the policies at the individual schools. Often, the eligibility will be there, but the amount of eligibility may have to be met by loans, and sometimes at some schools it's going to be more loan money than in other places. The impact of savings is also discussed in terms of student financial aid. And the point we want to make is that the savings that a family accrues is not going to be assessed in such a high rate as many people think. So the assessment of what has been saved for college is a very modest amount. In the federal methodology, it would be 5 to 6% of the savings a family has will be counted or assessed to go toward the cost of school. And in another methodology, the institutional methodology, it could be as low as 3%. So the importance of savings is great, and the impact it's going to have on need-based financial aid is often going to be very modest. Next, please. And in the topic of where savings should be put, it's very much true for need-based financial aid that it's much better to have the savings in the name of the parent as compared to the student. So the assessment rate for parent assets is going to be a top rate of 5.64%. And in many cases, other parent assets such as retirement funds or the value of the family's home or the value of small businesses is often going to be very much protected and kept out of the picture. So the importance of having assets in the name of the parent is very important. Thank you.
Typically, when selecting an investment vehicle and looking at the different college savings options, a major consideration would be the tax provisions for each of the options. There are taxable investments similar to the UGMAs, the UTMAs, life insurance, and mutual funds, and those are investment options that you'll have to pay taxes on for the growth as well as the withdrawal. There are also options that have special provisions for paying for higher education expenses, and that would be similar to like the savings bonds and retirement accounts. The last column shows options that are specifically created for education, and that's where we'll focus on, and those are the Coverdell plans as well as the 529 plans. Both of them allow for tax-free growth as well as tax-free withdrawal, as long as it's used for qualified educational expenses. Coverdells can also be used for kindergarten through 12th grade. So any families that are paying for private or parochial education for their elementary or high school students may want to look at using a Coverdell to help pay for those, help save and pay for those expenses. One of the caveats with the Coverdell is that there are income limits to participate. So you have to have less than $95,000 income if you're single, and less than $190,000 income if you're married. In addition, the Coverdell accounts have a contribution limit of $2,000 per beneficiary per year. The investment options with the Coverdell is pretty much unlimited. So you would open an account by going through any of the banks. 529 plans, there are 3 types of 529 plans. Those are savings plans, prepaid plans, and then there's also the private college 529 plan, which Notre Dame is a part of. On the next slide, you can kind of see some of the advantages and the benefits of 529 plans. So as we mentioned, the tax benefits. So their earnings and distributions are federal and state tax-free if they are used for qualified higher education expenses. Qualified higher education expenses would be tuition, room and board, mandatory fees and mandatory supplies. In addition, with the 529 plan, the account owner controls the assets the entire time that the account is open. So from the beginning till the end. And the account owner can change the beneficiary at will at any point in time. And there are no income limits. So it really is for every single family they are able to use a 529 plan. The states have worked really hard to make 529 plans more inclusive, especially to those who may not have a lot of financial assets. And so there are low minimum monthly contributions, low minimum contributions to open accounts. In addition, there are generous limits that allow beneficiary amounts up to $300,000. Grandparents and others may choose to look at 529 plans for estate planning. So the contributions do qualify as completed gifts. And you can put up to $70,000 if you're married, if you're single, or up to $140,000 if you're married. So 5 times the annual gift tax exclusion per year. One thing to note with 529 plans is that if you're using a savings plan, savings can be considered a misnomer. Savings plans do have market risk affiliated with them. So the state savings plans can appreciate and depreciate in value based on market. There are prepaid plans. In California, there is not a state prepaid plan. However, residents of California could use the private college 529 plan, which is a prepaid tuition program for private school. And Joe will talk about that in details a little bit later. One of the things that is important to look at is fees, and we'll go through that in the next few slides. So that is one of the other things to look at with 529 plans. So in choosing a next slide, as you can see, is we have a kind of a decision framework. And so the first thing to kind of look at is your home state's 529 plan, and look at that first and determine if there's any sort of state tax deduction, state tax credit, if there are any favorable tax considerations for using the home state's plan. If there's not, that opens the gamut, and you can kind of select any of the 529 plans or any of the other state ones. If there is, you want to kind of look at and see if there's significant state tax considerations. Then what you'll want to do is you'll want to look at risk versus guarantee. That speaks to whether or not you use a state prepaid option or a state savings option. You'll want to look at whether or not you use a direct sold plan or an advisor sold plan. And then you'll look at and evaluate the different investment options that each of the plans offer. You'll want to look at the historical investment returns, and you'll want to analyze the fees for each of those investment options. And you'll also want to take a look at who the manager is for the plan. So on the next slide, you can see that there are 3 types of 529 plans. There's the 529 savings plans. There are nearly 100 state-sponsored plans. Majority of the states, I think 49 out of the 50 of them, actually offer their own state's plan. In today's session, we'll have California Scholar Share around and they'll present on the California 529 plan. In addition, there are state prepaid tuition plans, and as I mentioned, California does not have one of those, but Illinois, Minnesota, or Illinois, Michigan, Texas, they all offer them, as well as several other states. And then there's the private college 529 plan, where that's a plan that 278 schools have gotten together and created a consortium. They guarantee the tuition benefit. And as I mentioned, Joe will talk in details about the private college 529 plan. On the next slide, we kind of talk about, whether or not you go with a direct or an advisor sold plan. The advantages of doing a direct plan is typically lower fees, but the disadvantage would be time and effort. So it's you taking the time to research and monitor your the different investment options and selecting that on your own. A lot of the states have put together age-based options, and so that makes it a little bit easier to navigate through the direct process. The other side would be using an advisor sold plan, and that's where you would actually solicit advisor advice. That would be a financial advisor to help you go through and select the plan or the investment option. That usually comes with higher costs, so higher fees for the advisor sold plan. On the next slide, most of the plans can be kind of broken out into 2 different major categories. One would be a static option, and the other would be the age-based option. The static option is static, so it's not programmed to change over time. It is exactly, the asset allocation will be exactly what you choose to select. It's usually either a single mutual fund or it could be a multi-fund portfolio, but nothing changes as your child gets older. With the age-based option, that's one that the asset allocation is actually programmed to change over time, and it becomes more conservative as your child approaches college-going age. So it will typically start off heavily on equities and less on fixed income. And as your child approaches 18, it will kind of shift the other way and become more heavily on fixed income, invested in fixed income assets, and less on the equities side. And California is with us today to talk about the California 529 plan options within their static and their age-based options. The next slide kind of talks about why we really hone in on the impact of fees. And so in this example, what you can see is a $2,000 annual contribution with a 5% annual asset growth. If there were no fees to this fund, you would see that the family would have $70,000 in assets. Since there is a 1.5% advisory fee, you can see the blue line, and so then the family has about $60,000 in assets over 20 years. That accumulated impact of fees is about $10,000, which is equivalent to 5 years of contributions. So when we talk about looking at the fees, we really want to make sure that you look at them before you select investment options and weigh them. And we'll turn it over to Brian and Jerry Ann, who will talk about the Scholar Share California 529 plans.
Appreciate it, Mary. Thank you. So as you guys can see here, with introducing California's plan, we go to the next slide, please. Next slide after that, please. Perfect. So yeah, the state of California wants the best for their families and have created a plan not only to help Californians save for college, but anyone across the nation can save inside a Scholar Share 529 plan. In fact, over 150,000 families have saved over $6 billion in the Scholar Share program. And in just the year 2014, account owners withdrew tax-free savings of over $300 million in qualified distributions to pay for college expenses, which means that there is that much less debt being taken out to send children to college. We invite you to visit the Treasurer John Chung's website to learn more about college planning and the board that oversees ScholarShare. Next slide, please. TIAA-CREP is a leading financial services organization with $800 billion in combined assets under management as of December 2014. They are the program manager for ScholarShare, and they've been managing money for retirement and financial security since 1918. TIAA-CREP is a leader in helping those in the academic, medical, cultural, governmental, and research fields plans for and live in retirement. TIAA-CREP Tuition Financing Incorporated, a TIAA-CREP affiliate company, is in the business of managing 529 plans on behalf of state sponsors and has been doing so since 1996. Next slide, please. We've made getting started with a ScholarShare plan very simple and cost-effective. A key feature of the plan is that there are no miscellaneous fees. We offer a choice of 19 investment portfolios with very competitive asset-based fees ranging from 0.11% to 0.60%. We also offer a principal protected option at no fee. Our 19 portfolios include active and passive age-based, multi-fund and single-fund portfolios, as well as the principal plus interest option I just mentioned. You can start a plan with as little as $25 or $15 if your employer is enrolled in payroll deduction with ScholarShare, with the account maximum currently at $371,000. You can enroll online or request a paper application to be mailed to you. And with that, I'll introduce my colleague Gary Ann now to further discuss the specifics of ScholarShare.
Thank you, Brian. Next slide, please. As Brian's shared, we've made getting started with a ScholarShare account very simple. Anyone who's interested in opening an account can find all of the information that they need online. We offer planning tools, including a college savings calculator and risk tolerance quiz to detailed portfolio descriptions, along with fee information and investment cost examples. All of this can be found at scholarshare.com. You can also chat live with any of the talented professionals that staff our call center, or you can ask to be connected with a local field consultant in your area. All of us are considered educators and we're not commission-based employees, so we're just as happy to help you understand the benefits of the ScholarShare plan as we are to offer you side-by-side comparisons of any other plan against ScholarShare. We're also happy to walk you through the enrollment process and provide follow-up service to you. The enrollment process can be completed in just a few minutes online, or we'd be happy to mail you an enrollment kit to your home. You can start an account with as little as $25 by check or electronic fund transfer. You can contribute through automatic contribution plan. Keep in mind that with ScholarShare, you're the one who determines your contribution frequency and amount. There are no contribution requirements outside of the initial $25 minimum. So if you'd like to contribute a steady amount every month, that is your prerogative. You may do that. If you prefer to contribute on a quarterly basis or even an annual basis, you can also do that. One of the things that we also like to do is open up these accounts to contributions from friends and family members, make them a part of the process of saving for a young individual's educational future. What we do to facilitate that is we've provided our account owners access to pre-printed gifting certificates that they can share with their email contacts. This gives friends and family members a method to make their own contributions into the account. Next slide, please. So you can choose to participate in any one or a combination of ScholarShare's 19 investment portfolios. And the portfolios vary in strategy and degree of risk. We've tried to set up something to meet the investing goals and temperances of a wide range of investors. You can select an option or a combination of option that fits your needs and values. If you're not sure about the best portfolio choice, we do encourage you to take the risk tolerance quiz that I mentioned a moment ago. That'll help you understand your comfort level in investing. If you still have questions, call the National Call Center or, as I said before, speak to a field consultant in your local area. We can assist you in evaluating your risk tolerance and hopefully help narrow down your investment choices. So I'm not going to go into great detail about each of our investment options, but the brief descriptions on this slide are helpful as a starting point. But I do encourage you to visit the website where you can find very detailed narrative descriptions of each of the portfolios. You can also see the fees associated with each portfolio. They do vary from portfolio to portfolio. And you can also see investment cost examples. I can't stress enough the value of reading and taking advantage of all the information that's available to you on the website. If you're more of a conversational type of person, give us a call by all means. Just briefly, I'll touch on what's shown on this slide. You can see that our portfolios can be broken down basically 7 actively managed portfolios, including our age-based option, which features 9 allocation strategies, or age bands, as we like to call them. Mary mentioned this style of investing a moment ago. It's a target date type of investing. We also have 6 passive or index portfolios, also including an age-based option, again with 9 age bands. There are 5 single fund portfolios and 1 principal plus interest fund, which Brian mentioned earlier. This provides for a protection of your principal and a guaranteed rate of return, which will range from 1 to 3% depending. It's currently paying 1% this year until December 31st of 2015. This rate is declared in advance for a period of up to 12 months. So you're free to choose any one or combination of portfolios that we offer. You also have the flexibility to rebalance between portfolios twice per calendar year now, or upon change of your beneficiary. So you're by no means locked into your initial portfolio choice. You do have the flexibility to make changes down the road should you choose to. Please note that the investment approaches that we describe here are not recommendations and do not take into consideration your personal goals or preferences. For a full description of the investment options, please refer to our disclosure booklet available at scholarshare.com. Next slide, please. I am going to spend a moment on the age-based portfolio options that Mary mentioned a moment ago. These types of portfolios are common among most 529 plans and certainly among our most popular fund families. The age-based portfolios are offered in actively managed and passive or index versions, as I mentioned a moment ago. The appeal of these options is that they offer an automatic diversification across equity securities and fixed income or debt securities, as well as the automatic shifting or asset allocation from aggressive to conservative as your child ages. I think Mary covered that really well earlier, so we'll leave it at that. But reallocation is not something that you, the investor, has to track. It's something that we take care of on the back end. So what you see on this slide is a nice graphic example of a sampling of 4 of the 9 age bands that make up the portfolio. You can see here how exposure shifts from a very young child between the ages of 0 and 4 years old. They've got a little over half of their allocation in equities. And contrast that with a much older child of 18 years and over. That's the pie all the way to your right. The contrast there, you see that with the 18-year-old, your equity exposure is significantly decreased. And the fund is now composed of half, or 50%, going into the funding agreement, which we mentioned earlier, which provides for protection of principal and the potential gains that have been enjoyed over the preceding years. Our age-based portfolios in both active and passive versions are composed of 9 age bands, with reallocations happening at age 5, age 9, age 11, 13, 15, 16, 17, and 18. For more information about all of the portfolios we offer, please visit scholarshare.com. Again, read those in-depth narrative descriptions of the portfolios. Take a look at the underlying funds, see the fee cost examples, as well as daily and historical performance. And again, speak with a plan representative at 800-544-5248, or ask to be referred to a local consultant in your area. We have some commonly asked questions on the next slide, if you'd like to go there. So a very popular question in these types of presentations is, what if my child doesn't go to college? We have a lot of options. First of all, these accounts don't have sunset dates, so you are not required to use the funds by any given date. There's no expiration on the account. And perhaps your child reevaluates their decision not to go to school and decides a year or so down the road that they would like to attend. The funds are there for them to use. Otherwise, if you have exhausted any possibility of your original beneficiary using these funds for post-secondary expenses, you can always change the beneficiary to another immediate family member of the original beneficiary. And the definition of immediate family member, as defined by the IRS, is quite a broad category. If there is absolutely no, I should mention that category does include future offspring. So if you've got a beneficiary who's got no, who will not be taking advantage of their 529 proceeds, hang on to that account as a legacy for future grandchildren. If absolutely no one in the family can use funds for educationally related expenses, you can always take an unqualified withdrawal from a 529 plan. If money is taken out for what we consider an unqualified expense or something not related to education, the federal government will then want to collect taxes on the earnings that you've enjoyed throughout the course of the account. Your state government is also likely to tax those earnings as well. I know in California there is the penalty from the federal government is 10%, and state of California tax on an additional 2.5%. So you're looking at 12.5% penalties on the earnings that you've enjoyed throughout the life of the account. The Indiana State Department of Revenue could also recapture any tax credits that were taken on the account if you are an Indiana resident. Thank you very much. That's what I've got. I'll throw it back to Mary.
Actually, I'm next on an opportunity to share with you a little more about the Private College 529 program. On the slide that's going to show in a minute, we have a summary of what Mary's actually described earlier as the various college savings options. There's savings accounts and prepaid accounts under 529, but there's also the covered L's and the custodial uniform gift of minors and so forth that can be used for college. And they can also be used for both public and private. The prepaid programs offered by states are used in paying for tuition and fees in those particular states for those states that offer that program. However, there's one additional option called the Private College 529 plan. Maybe a quick summary of the history of 529. 529 legislation was passed in the 1990s, and it was intended to help encourage families to plan and save. States were expected to be the platforms on which these programs would be built. They could be either college savings or prepaid tuition programs. A couple of years after Section 529 of the tax code was authorized, hundreds of private colleges gathered to see if they can expand the opportunities for saving for college in a way that would help meet the higher costs often associated with private colleges. So the legislation was amended, and it was possible for a consortium, a group of private colleges, to join together and basically form the same kind of platform for offering 529 prepaid tuition plan. The program currently has support of over 270 private colleges across the country. It definitely offers all of the federal tax-advantaged features of any 529 program. In addition, the program allows a choice of opportunities for students when the day comes. Although there's no guarantee of admission to any of these institutions, there is a wide range of opportunity, location-wise, price-wise, curriculum, history, affiliation, resources, admission standards, a wide range across the country. In fact, in California, currently there are 19 private colleges who are members of the what's been called the Tuition Plan Consortium. again, offering a special product called the Private College or PC 529 plan. So the next slide will basically highlight the fact that we have all the Private College 529 program offers all the federal tax advantages. It's different in that it's guaranteed by the individual institutions. So when the beneficiary shows up at the institution, regardless of what the investment world has done with the prepaid program, regardless of what might have happened to tuition increases over the years, the institution will honor the certificate. Another major feature with this program is highlighted by what Mary said about fees that can be significant for certain programs. There are no fees that the owner of the program has to pay. So the next slide further describes that this is a prepaid tuition program. So it's not an investment, but it's structured as a prepayment of tuition. You lock into today's prices for future tuition costs. The beneficiary at the time doesn't have to select a college. That's not done until it's time to enroll. So the 2-year-old is not directed toward any particular institution. That isn't decided until it's time for enrollment. Again, the risk for this is not borne by the owner of the fund or the beneficiary of the fund. It's 100% of the risk is by the institution, either the university or the college to which the student brings a 529 prepaid tuition certificate. The next slide tries to explain this a little further by giving an illustration. We'll call it College A, and the tuition and fees currently today are $35,000. The beneficiary is 8 years old when the program is established, and that was intended to pay for 1 year of tuition. It wouldn't have to be the full year. In this illustration, it is a full year's tuition and fee cost at this particular College A. The student was 8 years old at the time of the purchase. 10 years later, tuition at that institution grew at an average of 5% a year. So here's what happens when the student shows up at age 18. The tuition that was purchased happened to be a full year's tuition and fees of $35,000. However, the current tuition was over $57,000. Basically, the beneficiary has saved to over $22,000 by the purchase of this prepaid tuition Private College 529 program. Next slide. As Gary Ann has explained about the California program, if the student decides not to go to school or delay attendance, there's some very reasonable options, including rolling the Private College 529 program into another state-sponsored 529 plan. If the student, if there's no way that the account can be used, as with any 529 program, there would be a penalty for using the funds for other than qualified educational expenses. I'd like to conclude my remarks and go back to some of the points that Jim Malloy made in referencing how saving for college assets are going to be treated in the financial aid world. So often you hear families complain that because they planned and saved, if they were to plan and save, it's going to be penalized. That whole behavior will be penalized when the time comes to be assessed for whether you qualify for financial aid. One of the misconceptions with that kind of thinking is that simply showing up with a demonstration that you need help doesn't automatically result in your receiving resources that you need. So eligibility is not the same as entitlement. It's often misunderstood, but that's one point. As Jim Malloy mentioned, there's less than 100 colleges nationally out of thousands of colleges who can tell a prospective student and family that we will meet your need if you come and show that you need help. Most schools are not in that position. They don't have the resources, leaving the family and the student left with what we'd call unmet demonstrated need. which could be met in some cases by additional borrowing, and often is met by additional borrowing by the student and or the parents. That could be excessive. In some cases, there are not enough loan opportunities to help meet that unmet need. So simply not saving for college because you believe this is the way to be guaranteed some money is simply a mistake. It's not reality. So there's many options if you planned and saved that won't be there if you haven't planned and saved. Number one, there won't be as much stress when it comes time to making the payments. Number two, you won't be looking at additional financing costs, adding to the stress. And number three, you'll be in a position to provide more choice for the student, and possibly less debt. So this is one of the most encouraging moves by the federal government to help people plan and save for the cost of college. There are a lot of benefits for those typically who have gone to college, and we think this is a good way to go. Mary?
Thank you, Joe. We're going to bring back the slide that Jim talked to a little bit earlier, which is how much should you save in prepay. And we really want to talk on this slide about estimating the 4-year cost and using those net price calculators. A lot of people come to us and ask, at what point should they start looking at a net price calculator? They have a freshman in high school or a senior in high school, and we tell them really it's never too early to start using a net price calculator, because it gives you a sense as to how financial aid works for the different schools. And so, piggybacking off of Jim's comments about, published cost and net cost. So the published cost is the cost that you see on the websites, but the net price or the net cost is after financial aid. And the only way to really get a gauge as to what that net price is going to be for your family and for your specific situation is to go on to different net price calculators for different schools and actually put in your information and see how financial aid works at that school. As we mentioned, determining a savings goal, most families aren't going to be able to save 100% of their net price. And that's okay. The object really is to save as much as you can and to keep that on the forefront of your mind as you make financial plans and financial decisions. On the next slide, we talk about, again, the expected family calculators. College Board has a fantastic one as well, so that each school has one, but College Board has one. Look at different employer tuition benefits. Many employers offer either tuition benefits or they offer some sort of scholarship or some sort of match. So take a look at what your employer actually offers for you and if that's going to be able to help you pay for college. And then the other resources, as you can see in parentheses, we talk about family members. And so really talking to grandparents, aunts, uncles, godparents, everyone, and getting them on board with your college aspirations for your child. Opening an account doesn't take very long, and so the direct sold plan, some of them take as little as 5 minutes, or it could take up to 15 to 20 minutes. You need a few pieces of information to open an account, so you need to be a U.S. citizen with a valid address or a permanent resident. You need to provide your social security number or tax ID number. And then you'll also need to provide a successor account owner as well as their social security number. You'll need to name your beneficiary, so who is the account actually going to be for, and provide their social security number. One thing to note, the beneficiary can be you. So if you're planning on, paying for or saving for and paying for your graduate work, you can absolutely use a 529 plan to help you with those costs. The third step is to choose your investment option. And as you can see, many use the age-based option. And I think, our team over at ScholarShare had kind of echoed that as well. And then the last step is obviously to contribute, so put money into the accounts. A lot of times the next slide kind of goes into, how do you actually fund your account? What are some ways to think about planning and saving and creating that college savings strategy? Small regular payments, whether it's through direct deposit or whether it's just automatic withdrawals from your savings or checking account is a great way to go, and it adds up and accumulates quickly. Evaluating priorities, we talk about altering lifestyle to meet savings goals and looking for opportunities to contribute at every turn. So whether it's income tax refunds, holiday birthday gifts, you might receive a salary increase and take a portion of that and put it into a college savings account. Maybe you have a spouse who stayed home and is returning back into the workforce, so that's a second income opportunity, or you take on a second job. Those are all opportunities. If you have high school students, maybe they babysit, maybe they have a lawn mowing service, or they offer some assistance to neighbors, that maybe pet sitting. So getting your kids involved is another way to add to the college savings accounts as well, and having your student be a part of that conversation so that they you realize that college savings is a priority. Additional opportunities as you finish car payments, daycare, student loans, all of those are options. My famous one that we like to use all the time is potty training. So a kid, gets potty trained, and so go ahead and use the diaper funds for college savings. So we've seen, locally here, several people have said that that's what they've kind of done to, start saving for college, at the 1 to 2, 3-year-old level. There are a wide variety of resources that are out there. The next couple of slides are going to kind of walk through the one which is our savingforcollege.nd.edu. And we've got, all the information that we presented here is going to be on this website. So currently there's a lot of general information. And if you go under the partner state 529 plans, that's where we'll put the video archive of this webinar, and we'll also put the slide deck of this webinar up here, under the California page over there. We'll also have some information there on how to contact ScholarShare if you have questions on their 529 plan as well. We have a email address, savingforcollege.nd.edu. You can see it bolded at the bottom of this page. Please feel free to email us. We're here for you to answer any questions. If you have questions specifically for ScholarShare, we're happy to forward that on to them. If you have questions about financial aid, our team over at Financial Aid has always been very receptive to help us answer those questions as well. And so please feel free to engage with us even after today's session, especially as you go back and talk about saving for college with your family. On the next page, we have some other websites that are really good places to look at for options. And so, big collegesavings.org is the College Savings Plan Network, which is a consortium basically of 529 plans that have gotten together and put all their information out there, so you can kind of navigate and select from the different plans and different options. Big Future at College Board is a fantastic website. We can't say enough good things about College Board's work in this area, especially with the net price calculators. And as we mentioned, ScholarShare.com is a great resource for the California 529 plan, and then the private college 529 plan has their own options as well. If you have any questions, there is the chat panel, and so please go ahead and type out some of those questions, or you can use the form that we had emailed out earlier. We've already started receiving some of them, so we'll start fielding some questions now at this time as well. Jerry Ann, is there any such thing as overfunding a 529 plan? What happens to the extra funds at the end of college?
Thanks, Mary. I will say that at present, the state of California imposes a $371,000 limit on fund balance, or on plan balances. So, really overfunding a college savings plan is, and I can tell you this from the perspective of a parent of a college freshman in the UC system, this is a problem I'd like to have. Most 529 plans impose similar caps or limitations. As I mentioned, California's is $371,000. What happens to extra money is, I think we covered a little bit earlier, it's really up to you to determine. You have the flexibility to take an unqualified withdrawal and be subject to taxes and penalties on your earnings. That's one option. Another option, and something that I would always encourage, is seeing if there are alternate beneficiaries who can take advantage of this savings. I love the idea of hanging onto an account as a legacy for future grandchildren or future offspring of the original beneficiary. I think that about wraps that up.
Another one, our kids have 529 started by their grandparents when they lived in New York, and the family's state of residence is now California. Does residency matter for these 529 plans?
No, it absolutely doesn't. That's one of the great things about 529 plans. State of residence does not determine which 529 plan you're eligible to participate in. For example, you could live in New York and participate in Scholar Share, or vice versa. In terms of this individual's question, what likely happened in that situation was that the grandparents were enjoying a tax deduction from the state of New York for participating in the New York plan. Now that they are no longer residents in the state of New York, they're not getting that tax advantage. So it would be a good idea for them to compare what types of value there is in other plans. I would recommend looking at Scholar Share in this case. Unfortunately, the state of California does not offer a state tax deduction, but I think looking at the plan that they were in and comparing it against Scholar Share or any other 529 plan, it would be easy to see where they can enjoy some additional benefits.
And so that's where it goes back to looking at the different investment options and the fees and things of that sort, and the managers, and kind of selecting the option that's best for them.
Absolutely. And I would always also want to highlight the customer service that can be offered in various plans.
Right. Thank you. What is the difference between a California-sponsored 529 plan and one that's from T. Rowe Price?
I think T. Rowe Price at this point has the Maryland plan, and also perhaps Alaska, I think. The difference is, we talked about you, Mary, talked about the difference between advisor and direct sold plans. The California plan is a direct sold plan. The investments, the marketing, and a lot of the outreach is managed by TIAA CREF, but it is a direct sold plan. There are no advisor fees associated with it. A California resident who's looking at a T. Rowe Price managed plan is looking at a plan from another state and would likely be subject to advisor fees in that type of a plan.
Joe, you talked about the private college 529 plan. How long do funds need to be in the private college 529 plan before they can be redeemed?
The policy that the Tuition Plan Consortium follows is a reasonable one, and it's a 3-year period before which any disbursements can be made. This allows the investment world to smooth out any significant ups and downs that might be part of that world. So 3 years is the minimum for the private college 529.
Jim, we have a question on FAFSA financial inputting. What needs to be shown on the application with FAFSA? They need to show 401k, IRA. Is there a place that, you know, this family can go to figure out what kind of assets need to be included in the FAFSA forms?
The FAFSA does not collect information on retirement plans. And however, the best reference for a family is to look at the PDF of the FAFSA, which includes, when we say investments, we mean this, include these types of funds, but do not include these types of funds. So the printed instructions are the best reference for families before they sit down to complete the FAFSA.
And then we got another question. I have 2 children. Do you recommend investing in 2 separate 529 plans? Jerry Ann, do you want to answer that one?
Sure. I'm wondering if they're yeah, you know, I would not. If you find a 529 plan that meets your needs and your values, I would stick with that. I suppose if you're undecided between 2 529 plans, then that would make a case for investing in 2 different plans. But I'm wondering if the person asking the question is confusing accounts with plans, and I think that might be the case. 529 plans are designed to have a single account owner and a single account beneficiary. So if you have 2 children, you can only have 1 child as a beneficiary. I can speak on behalf of Scholar Share. There's really no incentive to having 1 account that you envision rolling over any leftover money to a future beneficiary. Because there's no charge to open an account. If you were looking at a plan that did impose a charge or a minimum balance, such as T. Rose Maryland plan, that would be an issue. With ScholarShare, no fee to open an account, so no incentive to consolidate your resources in one account.
And then we have another question. We have lived in several states and have 529 plans for Ohio, Missouri, and Indiana. This family now lives in California. Should they consolidate all of their plans into one California plan, or should they just leave them in each of the states of origin?
No, again, there's residency doesn't really come into play. They have the ability to go into any other 529 plan. So I would encourage them at this point to do a side-by-side comparison of the plans that they're currently in for each of their children. I would start with ScholarShare. I'm a little biased, but no, it's always a good idea to revisit your investments. And again, state of residency doesn't determine what plan you can participate in. So I do recommend doing a comparison of what they're in now against what is available to them. And that's something that we would be more than happy to assist with.
And then, Jim, we've got a financial aid question from a grandparent who wants to understand how grandparents' 529 plan or grandparents' assets for a child are contemplated in the financial aid world.
When a student completes the FAFSA each year, he or she would be expected to report as untaxed income any funds received from a 529 plan. So in calendar year 2015, if I receive $1,000 from a grandparent 529 plan or from any 529 plan, I would be expected to report that as untaxed income for me, the student, in calendar year 2015.
And then we got a clarifying question. Is ScholarShare and a 529 plan different, or is the 529 plan in California named ScholarShare?
That's a great question. Yes, ScholarShare is the name of the state of California's 529 plan.
And ScholarShare is part of the California state government?
ScholarShare is administered, like many 529 plans, it's administered through the state of California, specifically the Treasurer's Office. They provide administration oversight of the plan, and as I mentioned before, there's a financial services component to it, which is supplied currently by TIAA-CREF. We manage the investments, we do a lot of the outreach, all of the consultations, and the marketing.
Wonderful. Thank you. And then we had someone asking, if someone has a 3-year-old, how much money should they save in a lump sum now? Make one payment now, make several payments over the course of several years. What kind of advice would you give that listener?
Is that for me?
I think we're going to each take a turn answering it, because I was going to answer it too.
Well, my perspective is, it's all personal. It's all personal preference and personal values. I like to talk to people about strategies like dollar cost averaging. Not everyone is prepared to make a lump sum contribution for a very young child. A lot of people I talk to can afford to contribute $25 a month, and that's where it ends. So there are a number of strategies that you can employ to get yourself started. I think the most important issue here is getting started. Don't wake up when your child is a high school sophomore and think, oh my gosh, I need to get that 529 plan started. Think about it early on. Think about doing what fits in your budget on a monthly basis, because if you are in the habit of investing small amounts of money, you will benefit from things like dollar cost averaging and compounding of your earnings. Just getting started, I think, is the most important issue.
Joe, any additional comments?
I would wholeheartedly endorse everything that Gary Ann has just said. Every family is going to be different, of course, but the simple guideline is the earlier you start, the more you're going to have when the day comes. More choices, less expense, less stress. So if you're in a position to get started as soon as even before the child's born, that's great. You're going to be in a better position.
And one of our last questions are, how smart is it to contribute to 529 plans for children versus savings for a retirement or paying down the mortgage? Jim, do you want to?
Yes, Mary, we've had that question before, and I think it comes back to the individual plans of the family, and often it's going to require perhaps some input or some outside opinions of a financial planner. It really depends on what the goals of each of the family are, what their obligations are, and what the future holds for that family. So there's no right or wrong answer, but it's really going to depend on the situation for the particular family.
So we'd say all three, right?
We'd say
all three. Save for college, save for retirement, as well as pay down the mortgage.
Right.
And finding the balance that's the right one for you. One of the other questions that we got is on the private college 529 plan, and what is the minimum amount that can be contributed to the private college 529 plan? And can you buy percentages of tuition, or do you have to buy the whole thing all at once?
The minimum amount to start would be $25, and how much you put down, the value of that is going to vary from school to school. So let's say we use a nice round number, $10,000. Today, I'll just make up an illustration here. $10,000 might be worth 1/3 of the tuition at St. Mary's College, our sister school across the street here. At Notre Dame, it might be worth a fourth of tuition. The point is that when you show up with the certificate, when the tuition bill is due, if it's Notre Dame, you're going to have 1/4 of whatever the tuition is at that time. If it's St. Mary's, it's going to be 1/3, and it can vary again across all the different tuition values that exist in the 270 some schools that participate in the program.
So you're locking in the tuition across all schools all at once?
A percentage of the tuition.
Percentage of the tuition.
Up to 100%.
And Jerry Ann, what is the most you can contribute at one time to the California 529 plan? The cap for the program you had mentioned is $371,000, but what about at one time?
At one time, the maximum you can contribute is, if you're a part of a couple that files their taxes jointly, it would be $140,000 in one shot. And let me back up from that and say that any contributions into a 529 plan, you want to keep those in line with IRS gift taxing exclusions, which currently for an individual, the annual maximum is $14,000. Again, if you're part of a couple filing jointly, that bumps that up to $28,000. So you have the ability to make an annual gift of $28,000 under that scenario, or to pre-gift up to 5 years of contributions, which is where you would get the $140,000 contribution. Or if you're an individual filing singly, that drops down to $70,000. These are significant contributions and significant events, financial events in your life, and certainly something you want to talk to your tax professional or estate planner about before doing so. But in general, yes, the maximum one-time contribution would be $140,000.
Joe, we got another question. What is the investment return on the private college 529 plan?
As in many returns, it somewhat reflects the market. And the manager of the fund is responsible for this information. Our goal with the manager is, our goal as a consortium of 270 some schools, is that the investment return will exceed the tuition increases over the years. In the long run, the return is very positive. If the market suffered in 2009, 2010, so did many of the investments of this program. However, in the long run, the program is as solid as could be.
And the investment return for the family would be?
Exactly a very good question, Mary, because it doesn't matter what the investment return is in terms of the value of the private college 529 certificate. The institution will honor it regardless of the investment return that may have been occurring over the years.
If there are any other questions, I would invite you to use the chat box and answer type in your questions. We'll give it about another minute and see if anything comes up. Jerry-Ann, what's the minimum amount that can be contributed to the Scholar Share California 529 plan?
Mary, $25 is the minimum amount for a contribution. As I said, that's what you could start the account with, and that's what you could choose to contribute. That's the minimum you could choose to contribute each time you make a contribution. The only exception to that is if you are employed by a state agency in the state of California that participates in our payroll deduction program. There are also plenty of private employers in California that participate in that.
And what is the minimum account balance then? $25?
Well, that's a little bit of a difficult question to answer. We're not going to close an account once it's opened and funded. There is, you can imagine a scenario where you open an account with $25, you never contribute any additional monies, and let's say you're heavily invested in equities and you lose some value. Your balance could drop below $25. Again, we're not going to close an account for that reason.
Okay. Is Scholar Share sending information through the K through 12 school system?
Absolutely. And in fact, I just initiated a pretty big agreement with California State PTA. So we're really ramping up, really increasing our outreach to individual school sites within the state. I've been working for the last couple of years with the Charter School Association in the state of California. And we do a lot of outreach in the education field. We also do a lot of outreach with employers and individuals.
We received a question, if I have a non-private 529, can I roll over to private? Joe?
I believe the ability to roll from one 529 to another 529 is as available to the private college 529 as it is to any of the state-run programs.
And to the question if private college 529 is the only 529 plan to use for Notre Dame.
The university, Jim can speak to this, also receives 529 distributions from all over the country. We have a national student body.
You can use any 529 plan to pay for Notre Dame education, or to save for Notre Dame education.
Correct.
Jerry-Ann, we got a technical question. If you dollar cost average, when is it decided that you paid for a year or a portion thereof? Oh, I think this one might be for the private college 529 plan. So what happens here is that you're actually buying a tuition certificate, and that the tuition rates change July 1st of every year. So when you're looking at the value of that certificate, you're locking in the tuition, and the rates will change June 30th. And so when you're looking at the value of that certificate, it's how much have you contributed to the private college 529 plan throughout that basically academic year. So from July 1st to June 30th, if you put in $10,000 in aggregate over the entire 12 months, you're purchasing that percentage of tuition across all 278 schools. So the information that we repeat where you can get the information, it will be on savingforcollege.nd.edu. So that is kind of our home webpage, and we will have everything there. So if you go to the Partner 529 plan, Partner 529 states, that's where we'll have the information on the California 529 plan. throughout the entire site is a lot of what we talked about. There will be videos that you can kind of use. The PowerPoint slides will be out there. And so please use that as a resource, and please feel free to email us with any additional questions that you might have. Thank you, and have a great afternoon.